Hello everyone, my name is Sonita Leeuw, and I am a senior at Drake University studying environmental sustainability and resilience with a minor in rhetoric, media, and social change, and this is my honors senior thesis. My thesis will be looking at reflections of Black Mirror episodes within the year 2020, and my advisor for this thesis is Amy Letter. Oops. These are all headlines that were produced in March of 2020 as the world officially announced we were in a worldwide pandemic and the United States had officially declared going into lockdown. Dictionary.com on Twitter had asked its users to tweet to them one word that best described the year 2020, and the top 3 words for this were unprecedented, hellacious, and apocalyptic. As the pandemic took hold in the United States, I noticed the regular mention of a popular Netflix television show titled Black Mirror. Black Mirror is a dystopian genre of entertainment, and dystopias are very popular within the 21st century because they let us interact with an exciting, extreme reality that pushes us just a little beyond the disturbing issues within our own realities. As I noticed throughout on my social media feeds, there were literal illustrations of what people were experiencing and making those connections between 2020 to these Black Mirror episodes. I am a part of a digital generation, and social media has always been a big part of how we understand not only ourselves, but also the fictional entertainments that we watch. These screenshots are a demonstration of how individuals have been making connections to these extreme dystopian plots to the events that were currently occurring, since all of these tweets were produced within the first couple weeks of lockdown, as everyone was trying to digest and understand what was going on. My research questions are going to address whether or not audiences become galvanized into preventing the horrors of the depicted dystopias, or in 2020, do the dystopias become normalized and help us process our lives as a proceeding and unsettling nightmare? The Black Mirror episodes that I have picked serve as nearly perfect examples regarding 3 themes of our experiences within social media. The first being social isolation that is masked by online activity, the second being identity, status, and connection, and the third being individual power control with online controls and real-life consequences. Now, my research questions around these issues actually ended up turning out to be a little bit different before and after the start of 2020. Before 2020, when these episodes aired, the series did motivate people to safely imagine how horrible an issue could be and consider this change comfortably from a distance. Meanwhile, in 2020, these popular episodes have been served as narrative therapy. Narrative therapy is a technique that therapists will use when interacting with their patient and a traumatizing experience that they have gone through. When the therapist suggests narrative therapy, they're telling their patient to disassociate themselves from the experience by allowing them to state it as a narrative. This could be done then for users who are using Black Mirror as narrative therapy to cope with the real life 2020 that we are living in that has been perceived as unprecedented, hellacious, and apocalyptic. The episodes that I'm going to be focusing in on are White Christmas, Nosedive, and USS Callister. These 3 Black Mirror episodes are some of the most commented upon episodes, and that I believe illustrate the issues of and how a fiction dystopia can also be served as narrative therapy. All of these episodes, additionally, have premiered at least 3 years before 2020, so I will be able to take looks at how people interacted with these episodes when they first aired, and then how people are choosing to interact with them now in the current day of 2020. Some topics that I considered while in my analysis of these episodes are the ideas of loneliness, alienation, and narrative therapy.
The first episode I'm going to be talking about is White Christmas, which is from season 2, episode 4. This is one of the most highly rated and talked about episodes of Black Mirror. One of the reviews from Rotten Tomatoes states Black Mirror's Christmas special features one of the single most upsetting concepts ever introduced in the realm of fictional entertainment. This episode is also one of the most highly rated episodes on IMDb, with over 50,000 individuals interacting with the episode, giving the episode a score of 9.1 out of 10, which is one of the most highly rated episodes to date. Now, themes that were brought up within this episode were ideas of isolation along with the feeling of alienation. The episode follows along two individuals named Joe and Matt. Both of these individuals have been placed in extreme conditions of isolation due to events that and crimes they have done within their lives. So as the storyline goes on, the viewer is able to see the impacts of isolation on the two men and see how that torture plays out for them. Additionally, the viewer gets to learn about a concept Black Mirror brings up, which is called a cookie, which is a form of AI. Matt's character works for a company that works with cookies. Cookies are basically seen as the conscience of the individual, what makes up the person, their likes, dislikes, and places all of that information into a computer. And then that computer simulates and controls the life of the body of whatever that conscious may be by controlling the temperatures within their houses, the food they eat, making sure the life constructed for that body suits them specifically. Now, these cookies are they are given little bodies of that individual, basically a replica. For one of the scenes within the episode, Matt's character is talking to a cookie who had just been put into the system. The cookie tells him she refuses to be a slave to her own body. She doesn't want to do it. She wants to be put and sent back into her own body. Matt tells her that she cannot do that, and then it shows her the impacts of what she was to do if she was just to do nothing for months on end. So Matt's character simulates what it would be like for that cookie to just be in isolation for months on end to do nothing. And as the viewer in the cookie sees, once they check back in with this Matt checks back in with this cookie, the cookie tells him that she'll do it. She'll be a slave to her own body, forever just meeting the needs and being used as a mode for fitting the needs of her own body, just so she's not doing nothing. This idea of doing anything besides nothing made me think of the human drive that we have. As human beings, we need to do something to be productive and not be controlled or pushed into isolation like what's been happening in 2020.
This plotline actually mirrors current day quite a bit by thinking about quarantine and isolation and how these connections can be made as a form of narrative therapy to make sense of the experiences that we're going through now as we're all being pushed within our homes. These are some reactions to the episode before 2020, where individuals were shocked by the impacts of isolation and the extremes and the effects that this isolation had on the characters. One of the Reddit users stated, "Oh my god, I'm at a loss for words. I thought other episodes were bad, like Playtest or White Bear, but this one, holy shit, it's an eternal torture." Individuals were shocked by seeing how this isolation had such an impact on the characters within the television show. Now, some connections that were being made within 2020. All three of these tweets have been produced within the past month, stating lockdown feels like the White Christmas episode of Black Mirror. With Christmas having started early, I reckon the last bit of 2020 will end up being like that White Christmas episode of Black Mirror, stating how this forms of isolation in 2020 on its own feels like an eternal torture. And even though there is this extreme plot line of isolation that people were shocked by when it first came out, now it's being used as a plot line to help us cope with the unimaginable. Being pushed into isolation, this episode can provide people with a narrative to follow and make sense of the current day experiences. The next episode I'm going to be talking about is Nosedive, which is Season 3, Episode 1. Nosedive is also a very popular episode of Black Mirror. This is a review from Rotten Tomatoes, a perfect send-up of our obsession with social media and approval, as this episode took a harsh critique and engaged the user with how we interact with social media. This episode had gotten almost 50,000 individuals to interact with it on IMDb, providing the episode with an 8.3 out of 10 star rating, which is still pretty high for a Black Mirror episode. This episode takes a look at social media and how it can become a bit of an identity crisis. The episode follows a character named Lacey, who in a world where she's based upon these star ratings and this star system that every interaction that she has, she gets rated upon, almost like it's almost like Instagram in real life. If you had a like every time or a dislike every time you did something, and making sure that whatever that was, it was perfect and it was worth a like. This can be said for how we treat social media, constantly looking for validation through these amounts of likes and shares, and how this validation can then be built upon, and how you tend to get more likes on social media is based upon how much deception is placed within your avatar or your Instagram feed or whatever that may be. The avatars we build online are a foundation of deception. And there is also self-deception on social media. Self-deception can formulate the longer an individual posts their identity, meanwhile their identity just being their best photos, best impressions of themselves, whatever positive things are happening in their life, even though it's not authentically them, then this identity is what they are showcasing on social media. Now, this nosedive episode then has the user engage with and acknowledge how much control we place upon social media and the amount of likes that we place and the power that holds within social media based upon that, even though we all know that it's just based on deception and it's not how things actually are. So some reactions to this episode are looking at how people made this instant connection right away to Instagram in real life. This was 4 years ago when people weren't even on Instagram as much. Nowadays, more and more people are on Instagram with this loneliness of being placed in isolation. We turned to Instagram to stay connected with one another. Yet before, people were just shocked at how this episode had called out the culture we had accumulated on Instagram. However, now, in 2020, in a world full of loneliness, we're turning to social media to stay connected with one another. And that's what all of these individuals are noticing as well, comparing Nosedive to the year of 2020. How in 2020 there's this necessity to stay connected online, and however we are also acknowledging that it is almost impossible to be our real selves online. We are living in this world where we need to stay connected with one another as we've all been pushed into isolation, even though we know through the one outlet that we can do so, there is this lack of authenticity and deception that is built upon this platform. And the episode is a narrative that we can use to compare that to, seeing how it has happened, how it is played out in real life within the dystopian plotline, and then how social media has interwoven itself into our daily lives now within 2020, being locked away into our own homes. All right, and then the last episode that I'm going to be talking about is USS Callister, which is season 4, episode 1. And this is a Star Trek episode that gained lots of traction once it had premiered. Lots of individuals enjoyed the episode, such as on Rotten Tomatoes. USS Callister was a great way to start season 4 of Black Mirror. This episode had gotten an 8.3 out of 10 stars through over about 46,000 individuals interacting with the episode, which was also still, this is a pretty highly rated episode of the Black Mirror series. Now, this episode takes a look at how the main character's name is Robert Day, and Robert Daly's character, he is this individual who works for a video game company. They're producing this game called USS Callister. And in the real life, he is this quiet guy who's pretty much the outcast of his work, just stays in his office and keeps to himself. Meanwhile, when he goes home, he uses his own DNA, along with the DNA of his co-workers, to be replicated and placed within this video game that he has produced. And within this video game, Robert is able to be in control, be in power, be a leader, be everything that he feels like he cannot be in real life through the control of being in this video game. Now, this concept of being control within video games or the internet made me think of internet trolls as they hide behind their computer screens. Internet trolls are usually products of loneliness, unwellness, and personal suffering that can be a motivation for them. They're seeking status within a world that they are feeling alienated in. This is the same for Robert's character, whom feels as if he is out of control and is undermined within his reality. He then turns to his video game to seize control and power. However, he does it in a way that lacks compassion for any other human beings and sees that there are no real-life consequences to the harmful things and acts of violence he ends up committing within the video game because he just sees it as a game in his mindset. The same can be said for internet trolls. They all believe that it is all just a part of a game within their minds, and instead there are no any actions that they do, there are no real life consequences. This can happen with internet trolls through various levels of harassment, whether it's just a couple of explicit words, going all the way to ranges of telling individuals to act in ways of violence or produce harm to themselves. Through internet trolls stating this, there are real life implications of these actions. However, to them, and just like Robert's character, there seemed to be this disconnect between the real life consequences and the idea that the things they're doing is just a game. So this episode had shocked individuals with how Robert's character had acted. How at the beginning they felt bad for him being kind of this quiet guy. However, they're able to see within the episode that he's turning into this individual who is seeking for control in a world that he's lost it. And so then by the end of the episode, they see that he's just insane and looking for this control and being shocked by an individual who would have no compassion in the slightest for other individuals just to seek this control and power. Now, a connection has actually, crazy enough, been made to our current United States president in these characteristics of an internet troll and Robert Daley. The United States president currently has been using Twitter to undermine the science of social distancing, masks, and the security of the pandemic. All of these screenshots have been taken stating how Robert Daley's character and his actions of lack of compassion and seeing no real life consequences to his actions can be made as a connection to the United States president. How President Trump has taken the pandemic and almost acted as if an internet troll, telling people they don't have to wear masks. However, thousands of people have died. There are real life consequences of this. However, for some crazy enough reason, he is still in power, and this can be a way of has shocked many individuals. And this plotline produced by Robert Daley, this character who is fictional yet has such extreme characteristic traits and lack of compassion and acts of acting as if an internet troll, people are able to take this fictional character and place it with this president who has done the unthinkable by basically disregarding the health of thousands of Americans. So this connection has been made, even though it is shocking, and the way that Robert Daley's character acted shocked individuals when the episode first premiered. Now it's being used to make sense of the choices that the current president of the United States has done. So, 2020, the Black Mirror episode, trying to bring meaning to the loneliness and isolation of 2020. Through the combination of our social media posts, interactivity with dystopias, and the intense experiences of the pandemic is producing a now airing episode featuring quarantine, isolation, inauthentic but essential online connections, and dangerous trolls. To conclude, Black Mirror is a very vivid experience. It is difficult to watch and hard not to think about afterwards. The same can be said for the pandemic of 2020 as we're living through it. Along with other crises this year, it is an often overwhelming series of life-alternating events and challenges, one after another on a global scale. While researching and writing this capstone, while actually having to live through it, hasn't always been the easiest or the most constructive experience, but I think it's all been worthwhile. Why I was drawn to this capstone in the beginning is because I started to notice that people were making these connections to these extreme dystopian genres. I know for myself, I can't always sit through one Black Mirror episode at a time, but I thought it was so interesting that people were turning to these episodes that are so extreme and relating them to the lives that we are living and making sense of them. And that was just so interesting to me. And so that's why I was trying to do this, to try and show how and why people are doing this action. Why are we making a narrative for 2020? What does it do, and how does it help us heal and cope with the experiences that we have lived through? And I believe that the screenshots through social media and seeing how people have interacted with them, even though these plot lines are so extreme, they have provided people with some sort of ease and therapy in a way to cope with the experiences of 2020. So my hope is that by applying this analysis to narrative therapy and Black Mirror, will contribute to increasing our understanding of the issues and possibly with social media and the interaction of fictional and real-world crises. This can help us move forward into 2021, living through dystopias and galvanize healing disconnects between the digital and real life. Thank you so much for listening. I really do appreciate it, and I hope everybody has a good day.